Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Rich, and I'm the founder and CEO of Just Right Reader. And I like to think that I'm living my best life. I get today to introduce three amazing educators who are, I believe, changing outcomes for students daily. So today we have just an action-packed symposium. I think one of the best we have ever done. We're going to start today with Dr. Brandy Berry, and she's going to tell the story of Duval and their evolution in the science of reading that is magical, and you will feel very inspired. I've been talking to Brandy for like about 2 years now, and every time I get off the phone or I get off the Zoom or I get off an in-person, I am just inspired because every decision is meticulous, every decision is thoughtful, and every single decision is kid-based. So when we chose which district in Florida to start with and to tell the story of the science of reading, we really wanted it to be Duval because of that focus on kids, that focus on the science of reading, and the vision in changing outcomes for kids. Start with Brandy. We're going to then move, and you're going to hear Dr. Burns, Dr. Matthew Burns, or should I say, no, Lucy. Dr. Lucy Hart Paulson. I mean, there aren't many times in your life you can be in the presence of someone who has created LETRS and completely changed how we view the reading of science, the teaching of science, and what we expect for kids. We're going to end our time together with Dr. Matthew Burns, and he's going to share with us really some thoughtful reflections on UFly, how that impacts our education and what we're trying to do for students, and some new cutting edge research that they've done for him and for the University of Florida. So I am so excited to kick it off today and bring Dr. Berry upstage to tell the story of Duval and learn with you all today. Dr. Berry, I can't wait to pass it to you.
Good morning, everybody, and it's good to see all of you here in the room and those of you that are streaming from near and far. They asked, and I have a couple slides. Is someone forwarding it for me? Okay, clickers are good. Awesome. So we'll go past that. All right, so they said, can you talk to us about Duval County, Jacksonville, Florida, for those of you who may not know where Duval County is. What has your journey been for the science of reading? And it's getting a lot of attention right now in Florida, particularly because of House Bill 7039. So this is the House bill that just recently passed this spring in Florida that now is requiring all school districts in Florida to ground their resources and their instruction in the science of reading. And this has caused a lot of like, okay, are we doing it? Like, what do we need to do to make sure we're in alignment? But the good news for us here in Jacksonville and Duval County is this is not the beginning of our journey. Those of you who have been in Duval have been a part of our journey. It's been at least 10 years that the pieces for the science of reading have been coming into place for us as a district. Now, have we arrived? No, I don't think any district can say that they have, but we've made a lot of progress and we have plans to continue in our journey. What really shocked me was as I tried to put together a visual of our formula for success in Duval County, I wanted a picture. And what came out of my head was a math equation. And I know that you weren't prepared for that because this is a reading symposium. So why is there an equation up on our screen? But as I kept circling around, like, what is it taking for our district, the 20th largest district in the nation, to be fully grounded in the science of reading? This is what came out of my head. So let's unpack this just a little bit. First of all, what are we trying to do? We are trying to grow proficient readers. That's our goal. Whether you want to call them skilled readers, strategic readers, proficient readers, we want students who can pick up age-appropriate text and read and understand the text. That's our goal. So that part is easy. But it's all those other variables in front of the equal sign that matter the most for us achieving this goal. So all good mathematicians know the order of operations, say that in an equation, if there are parentheses, we have to start inside the parentheses. So we're going to start with the R, and the R is probably the most obvious part of the equation. It's the research. When we say science of reading, we're really talking about a huge body of research that spans across multiple areas of study. We're talking about cognitive science. We're talking about psychology. We're talking about neuroscience and how the brain functions, because human brains are not wired to naturally read. So we're using a lot of parts of the human brain in order to accomplish proficient reading. So we have to know the research across all these fields to understand how humans learn to read and in what conditions are they most likely to do that. Then we get to what exactly is the research for teaching someone to read. And somebody, I think with a real sense of humor, decided to call this the simple view of reading, another math equation. So I promise you this is a reading symposium. But they started out saying if we take decoding and we multiply it by language comprehension, then ta-da, people will be able to read with meaning. And if you have just two variables, it sounds pretty simple. Until we say, well, what exactly do we mean by decoding? Exactly what do we mean by language comprehension? And somebody came up with this. And all of a sudden, Scarborough has unpacked this simple view of reading, and it's not quite so simple, is it? In fact, we now understand why the t-shirts that say teaching reading is my superpower are going off the shelves like hotcakes, or teaching reading is rocket science, because it is complex. And understanding each individual piece of Scarborough's rope and how that becomes instruction and learning experiences and practice for kids, it's a little complicated. Our district also threw in some more cognitive science and some more neurological science around how people learn. Because Scarborough's rope tells us how we learn to read, but we also need to know what are the conditions in which humans best learn. And so we used How People Learn. It's now in its second edition to help us unpack those principles of learning so that we know what we want to see in our classrooms. So that's our research. And we've been grounding all of our instructional leaders and teachers in that research. Then we go to the IM, which is instructional materials. And I think this is a natural place for school districts and school leaders to go. If we know what the research says, do we have the right materials in our classrooms for those things to happen? And so we look at things like explicit structured phonics, and we look at things like knowledge-based language comprehension resources so that we are teaching both how to decode and how the English language works so that we can understand what we're reading. So we've been working to make sure that we have all those pieces in place for our teachers. Of course, the resources have to match Scarborough's rope. If we say this is what happens to be a skilled reader, we have to provide instruction, practice, and lots of opportunities for students to tighten that rope up and become the skilled readers that we desire them to be. We also, in the state of Florida, have a set of practice profiles that as teachers are teaching, it has to be explicit, systematic, scaffolded. There has to be opportunities for feedback and differentiated practice. So when we're selecting materials, we've got Scarborough's rope on one side, we've got our practice profiles on the other side, and we're evaluating things and saying, will this get us where we want to go? And then, of course, the A is the assessments, because the science of reading doesn't work if we don't know what our students know, what they can do, and what they still need to learn. So we make sure that our teachers have screening assessments, diagnostic assessments, progress monitoring assessments, and of course the state of Florida takes care of our summative assessment so that we as educators know where our kids are, where they need to go next, and that helps us match the materials and the instruction that each individual student needs. So we've got those parentheses. They're all taken care of. We've got the research, materials, and the assessments to know where our kids are. But notice that there is one more variable in the equation. And it's sitting outside those parentheses, which means that it has to be multiplied. So everything inside those parentheses get multiplied by this variable sitting on the outside. Any guesses what the ST might stand for? I heard some whispers. How about a skilled teacher? Because no program by itself is going to fix the issues that a student has in the area of reading. We can buy all the stuff, but it is the teacher in that classroom who will be able to take those materials and make the magic happen. It is that skilled teacher. Notice I didn't say teacher. The skilled was very deliberately put in front of teacher. When we talk about a skilled teacher, what we are looking for, number one, teachers that are grounded in the science of reading and the science of how people learn. They know their stuff. Teachers who are literate with data, who know where their kids are, each individual child in their classroom. They know what they know where they need to go, and they know how to use those resources to get them there. And then this third one, aligned autonomy. Teachers need the space in their classrooms to use what they know, the research and the data, to drive the instruction that their children need, but in alignment with what the science says and the goals of their school and their district. So it's aligned autonomy. It's not willy-nilly. We're all rowing. We're all pushing in the same direction, but we are empowered by the research and the knowledge that our teachers bring to their classrooms. It is the perfect blend of the science of reading and the art of teaching that brings that magic into a classroom. And you've all seen it. You've walked into that classroom and said, there is something magical happening in this classroom. It is that skilled teacher who is creating that magic. So for us in Duval County, we still have all those pieces constantly being revisited. What does the research say? What are the pedagogy practices that we want to see in our classrooms, the experiences we want our students to have? But what we've realized is professional development, professional learning of our teachers is critical to having a skilled teacher in front of every classroom of students. And we have had limited access to our students over the last few years due to vacancies, lack of substitutes, and all of those issues that districts across the nation are facing. So this year, we are all in on developing our teachers so that they stand in front of their students prepared to be grounded in the science of reading. In order to do that, we are hyper-focused on what is a practice that we want to see in our classrooms? Then why? Why is this something we want to see happen in our classrooms? How do you actually do it? And then I think the last one is super important and often forgotten. When? What is the right conditions in which this practice should be used? When a teacher knows the answers to all four of those questions, he or she can go into that classroom prepared to make those in-the-moment decisions that happen in even the best planned lesson. You have to be able to respond to your students based on how they're engaging in the learning. Our professional development this year is ongoing. We're seeing our teachers for a full day every month. It's a huge investment, but it's going to pay off in having those skilled teachers in front of our students. And we're keeping this collaborative. We know that we have an amazing wealth of knowledge in the teachers in our district, and every teacher deserves the opportunity to collaborate and hear from other practitioners who are having success in their classrooms so that collectively we're learning from one another. So that's our formula. We're going to take those skilled teachers and we are going to multiply them by the research, the instructional materials, and the assessments in order to achieve proficient readers. Every student in every classroom across the district reaching their potential for a choice-filled future. So we join you to tune in to our next speakers so that together we can create that magic for every child.
Wow.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. That was so beautiful, wasn't it?
That was incredible. Yeah. Whoop, whoop.
I mean, we're going to pass it to you, but the skilled teacher part was exactly, I feel like, of everything that it's kind of beautiful that you go next because that's your thing, right?
Oh,
There's so many things that are your
so many
thing,
things.
but like that's your passion as a skilled teacher. So thank you, Dr. Barry. That was beautiful and inspiring. And I think I just can't wait to see what happens next for Duval as you put so much energy into your teachers. Can I say all the stuff that you've done?
Say all this stuff. Okay, I'm gonna get this clicker.
All right, go get your clicker.
I got it.
I had to print it out for myself because your bio is so beautiful. Dr. Lucy Hart Paulson is an author and literacy specialist with a mission of bringing research to practice. She is also a speech-language pathologist with many years of experience working with educators and with young children and their families in a wide range of educational settings. In addition, Dr. Hart Paulson was an associate professor teaching and conducting research in the areas of language and literacy development and disorders. She provides professional development using a broad-based perspective, blending areas of language and literacy together, resulting in effective, appropriate, and engaging language-based literacy instruction and intervention for all students. Finally, Dr. Hart Paulson is also the co-author of the Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling, LETRS for Early Childhood Educators.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine that? How I got to the point of being asked by Louisa Moat if I would write a book with her on what we need to know when you are an early childhood educator.
Okay, well, Dr. Barry and I are gonna pass it to you. We're so excited you're here. Go ahead.
Okay.
Duval, you're fabulous.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity. I'm really humbled to be in this space and working with all of you. And I hope what I can do is share some things that I hope are going to really square up with your thinking. And I hope that there may be some things that are going to kind of circle around, like how are we doing this? How else can we manage this opportunity for this writing piece? And I hope in our short time together that there are some really important points that you can take with you that are like, yeah, this was really worth my time. So thank you so much for this opportunity, Sarah and Just Right Readers. And more importantly, thank you so much for all of you and what it is that you get to do, because you have the really important opportunity and the responsibility of making a very important difference for the children in your care, for the teachers and who get to interact with those kids. So thank you so much for your dedication and your commitment, and by participating in opportunities like this, it just expresses what your commitment and your dedication is. So thank you so much. Thank you for those who are joining us in this virtual realm. So I live in Central Oregon. That's a picture from my deck. Those bumps out there are actually volcanoes. They kind of rumble. No, they don't rumble too much. So that's good. So we're going to fly through a lot of thoughts that I have on this writing process. And Dr. Barry, thank you so much for what you're doing, the guidance that you have in Duval County and Jacksonville. Here we are, across the country from my perspective. But it's so important. And that conversation about the science of reading, what I hope we get to, I loved your comment about the science of learning, the science of language, the science of instruction, all of those pieces, and importantly, the science of reading. And from my perspective, an analogy that I like to talk about with the writing process and the reading process, reading and writing are like breathing. You read, it's like breathing in. And what else do you have to do when you breathe in? You gotta let it out. And when we add a really important perspective of the writing process, so importantly in the earliest grades, earliest educational levels, we're going to make such an important impact on the lives of the children who were in our care. So how does that sound? I'm going to say some things that square up. It's going to go really fast. And so I have a lot of topics for you to think about. And so when you want more, when you have that circling around, oh yeah, I need to know more about that. That's what my hope is that you're going to leave with some thoughts that you're going to be thinking about to enhance what it is that you're already doing and make another really important difference for the children in our care. So I want you to take 5 seconds and just rate the importance in you when you are, that little line that you can't read. That's the difference between PowerPoint and Google Slides. So I think it says, so when you are when you're becoming literate, how important are these elements in that process, in the journey of getting to the point of that simple view of reading, of being able to read competently? But we also know there's this important part of writing. Okay, so just really quickly, your gut level part of how important are writing, spelling, print, understanding print conventions, and composition. Not very important, or on the scale to really important. Ready? Go. Okay, your gut level. Any of them down on that left-hand side? Any of them over on that right-hand side? Okay, let's talk about them. Okay, so here's what I'd like to cover in this short period of time. So talk about some developmental connections between reading and writing, particularly in that early literacy time period. Describe some assessment strategies of things that we need to do in that assessment piece, following up with Dr. Berry, what you talked about. Assessment is so important in understanding and knowing where our kids are at, because then that helps us know what we need to teach them. And then identify and implement research-based writing instruction. When that instruction isn't going from that tier 1 with those majority of children, we have to go to the next level of intervention, and what we can do to facilitate strong literacy learning. It's not just about reading, it's also reading and writing, and an underlying piece of that is the oral language. Okay, so 3 important pieces: foundations, assessment, and intervention, instruction intervention. Let's talk about some foundations. But first, in that instruction piece, this is the green thing. This is my color thing, being in early childhood. Pointing colors are important. Okay, so in the big picture, when you are focusing on instruction and writing, you want to focus on content. What does that little friend want to write about? Handwriting and spelling development are going to provide really important instructional information, assessment information for us. So keep that in mind. That's coming up later. Okay, so let's look in the big picture. Just like the simple view of reading, we have a simple view of writing, and it includes those components of transcription. You see what those are: handwriting and spelling. Composition, it's oral language, of being able to say words and sentences into paragraphs and paragraphs into essays. It's the whole process of organizing what it is that you want to write about. Just as from an oral language perspective, you're going to organize what you want to talk about. And then a really important aspect is executive function. And let me ask you this, to y'all here and you all who are joining, how many of you see some challenges with children's executive function development? And that's going to compromise, and it's going to impact what their literacy learning is going to do. How about this? I improved in my handwriting. Now she found out I can't spell. If you don't think that that handwriting is an important part of the writing process, I hope that I can convince you in the next few minutes that it is a really important foundation. Just like decoding is an important foundation to being able to read, handwriting and spelling are really critical foundations to being able to write. All right, so here's the simple view of writing. Jewel wrote about this decades ago, and then a lot of the work that I love to follow is the work of Virginia Berninger. She spent her entire her career researching on what we need to know and understand about the writing process. So we have 3 components. It is the mental control processes, and what those are is executive function, and what, all those elements of things that we have to keep in mind when we want to write something. we have those lower level transcription skills, which is handwriting and spelling. If those are not in place, it's that multiplier effect. If they're not in place, then proficient writing is not going to happen. In the middle part, we have those higher language things that we want to say, and that's the composition part of it. And we know that in this formula, if you have all of those skills, you're going to get proficient writing. But if something's not there, look what happens if you take out handwriting and spelling, then the proficient writing is not going to take place either. Okay, so this is I captured this image from a study that James does, Karen James at the Indiana University. And her focus is in the area that I love, is that early literacy, preschool, kinder, and looking at the impact of handwriting on the brain. And if you just really quick, how many of you are familiar with the writing brain, or excuse me, the reading brain? You know, if you take your left hand and you put it back here in the back part, there's the visual cortex, it's what you see, and then you move to the meaning cortex, and you move to the front, which is where the production takes place. And when you look at those blue dots, you can see those blue dots. Yep, that's actually the reading brain and the connectivity that's going on when reading is happening. And then you look at the pinkish dots, that's the letter perceptual system. How many of you are working with little friends who are in pre-K? Some of you, how about kinder? How about first grade? And that's the instructional piece. How many of you have first graders who do not know all of their letter sound connections yet? And so important too, a lot of this is a writing component. And so when you look at this pink line here, or the pink dots, yeah, there's a visual aspect, there's a meaning aspect, there's a production aspect. Oh, but there's something going on up here. So if you take your hands and you pretend that you have a headband with your fingers and your thumbs and put it across your head like this, that part of your brain is the motor strip. That's where you have the motor planning that's taking place when you want to do something. And when you want to write a letter, there's a big motor plan that has to take place. And when we help children understand and know what that motor plan is, when you want to make a letter K, here's how we do that. That has a really important aspect of it. And then you look at the writing system, this green, visual, production, and the motor strip. So when you are teaching little kids about letters, should you also be having them write them? Absolutely. And when we teach them how to write them accurately from the start, we're going to create a good motor plan. How many of you have fifth graders who still write like this? And are they going to change? Their motor plans are concrete. And jackhammering that concrete to change that motor plan is so difficult. So let's start with good habits from the beginning. When we have the opportunity to help children learn about the alphabet, what should we also be including? Letter names and sounds and writing it. Is handwriting important? Yes. So handwriting serves to link that visual process. Where's the visual processor? It's back here. With the motor experience, where's the motor? Right here. Facilitating subsequent letter recognition skills. So important component. And then you look at opportunities where you have the opportunity to learn about letters. And then there's a writing component that goes along with it. Yeah. Okay. Anything squaring up? Circling around? I see a little bit of circling on your faces. Some big important points? I hope so. Okay, so when you teach handwriting, it's linked to better letter perception, reading fluency, and writing fluency by handwriting the letters. It trains the orthographic loop, which supports spelling and composing, and it trains that serial organization. One of those important executive function things of this is going to be first, this is second, this is third. And the goal is automaticity, fast, quick. Okay, and what that does is it reduces the load needed for composition. Just like being able to code words rapidly, getting to that point of orthographically mapping words so that you just recognize them instantly adds to and contributes to your comprehension. Being able to write the letters rapidly, automatically contributes a lot to composition. Okay, so why handwriting instruction? Why? There's a lot of good research because learning to form the letters by hand improves the perception of letters and it contributes to reading and spelling. Those things going together. Automaticity. Okay, so spelling. What does spelling look like when you are 4 in pre-K in your VPK program? It's learning what those letters are, and guess what? I think I'm beginning to learn what this letter sounds like. So that when I want to write something, I know how to take advantage of that sound symbol information. So really important. Spelling. That other component piece, or a language. And when you think about the writing process, Virginia Berninger has this approach. What you think you can say, what you say you can write. Yes, so with oral language, we have to know and understand what language is. What is a sentence? What are the parts of a sentence? How do you take the sounds to form words, the words into sentences, the sentences into bigger narratives, descriptions, conversation? And then vocabulary is a really important piece of that. It's a big aspect of, you have to be able to spontaneously recall the words that you want to write down, so that then you can go through that whole process of figuring out what the sounds are in those words and what the letter patterns are they're going to map to those sounds. Okay, and so here's a little instructional component, sentence construction. Helping kids intentionally take 2 simple sentences, combine them together into a more complex sentence is a valuable strategy of what we can do. It improves the writing quality. But you do that from an oral language perspective. What that does is intentionally illustrate how sentences work. Okay, and then the writing process, we have this whole big piece of, understand this, of the planning, drafting, revising, editing to get to the publishing piece. Okay, so executive function, really important aspect of the writing process. I would also propose or submit that executive function is an important aspect of the reading process as well. But it's even more critical, vital in the writing process because writing is the most complex linguistic task that we do. Okay, so we talk about executive function and the component parts of executive function. Oops. Okay, so there's supposed to be a little kindergartner's image there of a writing, which didn't come up. It's gone. But anyway, with little kids, yeah, we'll move on. Executive function, right? Is it important? Yes. Okay, thanks, Google Slides. All right, let's take a look at some assessment pieces. See how these items match up with what you're currently doing in your own writing assessment. Do you have a plan for looking at motor development and writing? That's particularly important for little kids. And then as you get into older kids, what is that motor plan doing and how is it contributing or not to their opportunities to write? So motor development for handwriting. Do you have a plan for looking at children's word reading and spelling development? And do you have a plan for identifying what their composition development is? And then I also want to just share with you some of the recommendations for grade level assessment tasks when you want to have an assessment process that's going to give you the information and the data that you'd like. Okay, so the motor skills needed for writing. Are any of those surprising to you? Just putting it out there, you do need to have some level of hand coordination. How many of you see that changing today from what it may have been 10, 15 years ago? Because there are things and changes in our culture that are impacting what children's motor development, motor skill development is doing. Fine motor. Writing is a fine motor component skill set. You need to be kinesthetically aware. Where's my hand? How hard am I pushing on the paper? The rhythm and flow of movement. And you need a gated movement. So if you're dragging along, those of you who work with little kids, you've seen an opportunity where a little kid's pushing so hard that they rip the paper. Tears. Oh, those aspects and elements of motor that are important in building the handwriting component. Okay, handedness is another piece. Handedness neurologically should be established by kindergarten, by the time a child is 5. However, we're helping kids learn about the letters when they're younger. And that handwriting piece makes an important difference. How many of you have lefties? Yep, that would be me. And if you put your hands together like this and you make them go out, or you have your hands out, be careful who you're sitting next to, and you pull together this way, right? It's easier to go out. If you start midline and you go out, it takes more energy and effort, tension to come in. And so if you're a righty, you get to go like this, out. If you're a lefty, you start midline and you go, oh, in the opposite direction. If you're doing Hebrew, that's great, but it doesn't work so well in the English language. Okay, so understanding that. And when you're learning to write the letter B, when you're a little kid and you're a right-hander, we're going to start in the center and go down, and then we're going to make a bump. If you're a lefty, we're going to make a line in the center, and we're going to go out. Ooh, whoops. That didn't work. And that's another conversation about what's going on neurologically when you're learning about letters and the mirror invariance that goes along. Some fascinating work that Stanislas Dehaene is doing. Okay, pencil grip. Pick up a pencil. Look at your neighbor. See what your own pencil looks like, what your own pencil grip looks like. And the tripod pencil grip is the most motorically efficient way to hold a pencil. And how many of you have kids whose pencil grips are not very good, or a fist grip? Yeah, so we have to teach that. How does this pencil grip look? Not quite there, but what this teacher did was take a tissue, fold it up, give this little friend these 2 fingers a job, like a bunny tail or something, and she's not holding that pencil down by where the paint starts. That's the prompt, and there's an eraser. And so when you are working with little kids, what type of tools should you have when you're helping them learn to write? Long or short tools? Short. Short. Should they be skinny or chubby? Skinny. I know, we've had this. How many? Yeah, right? How long have we been providing those big fat crayons and big fat pencils for kids? Right? And you try to write with something big fat in your hand, you can't use your fine motor muscles to do that. So the recommendation is short, skinny, that fits proportionally in young children's hands. Because when you have something short, you can't fist grip it to be able to write. So it provides the opportunity to do something in bigger ways. Okay, so, and what Berninger describes or recommends is cut the erasers off. Because how many of you have kids who spend so much time, they write something and then they spend the rest of the time period erasing it? Say, oh, you didn't like that? That's okay, just cross it off and try it again. That's good. That gives you really good information about what they were thinking about to start with. Yeah, how automatic they are. Okay, in our country, we start with manuscript for the simple purpose that what children are learning to read in the alphabet font that we have in many of our decodables, and you look at Just Right Reader and the fonts that they use, they're matching what the letter shape is when kids are learning about the alphabet. Other English-speaking countries start with a cursive first. But in our country, we start with manuscript. And what Berninger recommends is that you focus, the first year of instruction, you're going to focus on legibility. shaping those, building the motor plan, the motor memory for how you shape those. And then in the second year of instruction, legibility, and then automaticity. Cursive, what she recommends is introduced in third grade. How's that matching up with where you are at in your districts? And then periodic tune-ups. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. Get out a piece of paper. And this is a little bit of an assessment opportunity that you can do. From a clinical perspective, when I was working with students, I would do this with first graders. I did not do this with kinders because they're not at that any level of automaticity yet. But some of the kids that I got to see in first grade, I would certainly try this. We don't have any general normative information in first, second grade, but I want to just share with you. So here's a quick little assessment that you can do to identify what a child's automaticity is, legibility and automaticity. So I want to take out a piece of paper and a writing tool. Okay, do y'all have that? Do y'all have that? Sitting at your desks, wherever you are? Okay, check your own pencil grip. And now what I'd like you to do is when I say go, I want you to print the lowercase letters in a row from A to Z. Okay, you ready? And then raise your hand when you're done. Okay, you ready? Go. $15, $16, $17, $18, $19, $20. Yeah, and hands are raising between about 15 seconds and 20 seconds. Good for you. So how long did it take you? Here's what the normative data looks like. So when we're teaching about letters, we first want to focus on accuracy before fluency. And what some of the Berningers research has identified is that third graders should be able to do that in less than a minute. It took you, highly trained and literate educators, between 15 and 20 seconds or so. Adults should write fluently the alphabet in 20 to 30 seconds. You guys are the cream of the crop in this kind of experience. But that gives you a really good understanding in a pretty quick way of what children's understanding is of how you shape all the lowercase letters. Okay? All right, so motor is really important. And despite the belief that handwriting is just a motor skill, there are so many linguistic aspects, multisensory components that contribute to handwriting. Lots of language processes are involved. So is handwriting important? Absolutely it is. All right, how many of you are familiar with Linnea Airey's phases of word reading and spelling? Those phases, they're listed there: pre-alphabetic, partial, full, consolidated. So notice what the title is: reading. So word, reading, and spelling going together. And so the pre-alphabetic, the big part of pre-alphabetic, and that's where our VPK kids are, our pre-K kids. There's a visual aspect to what children are recognizing and understanding about the written code that we have. You look at a letter, you recognize it because of the shape, what it looks like, and then we provide a name for it. And as their cognition grows, their language grows, and executive function grows, then they're able to make an abstract connection, an abstract thinking level connection between what this shape is and the actual purpose of what this shape represents. And that's the speech sound. Okay, and that happens at this partial alphabetic phase where there's letter knowledge, and then phonemic awareness is also developing. And so you take that sound information, the letter information, and put it together. And then we move into full alphabetic, phoneme, grapheme correspondences, complete phonemic awareness, and then into consolidated. And an element that I did not put in here, but an element that is important at the consolidated phase, from that full alphabetic where it's phoneme, grapheme connections, at the consolidated level, it moves to another bigger, deeper connection, and it's phonemic and syllabic. So you look at a group of letter patterns and you recognize what that syllable structure is. For example, you see T-I-O-N at the end of a word. You don't sound it out to say tie-in, like lion. You say, Okay, so what's going on pre-alphabetic is pre-K. And then partial alphabetic is pre-K moving into a big focus in kindergarten. And then full alphabetic continues kindergarten in through that early reading time period when children are really building and learning about the phonics patterns and how our words work, and then consolidated. And depending on the complexity of the word, as you all know, it's going to be easier or more challenging. That's a pre-K kid. Moving into kindergarten. Yep. And what did she write? That just happens to be my granddaughter, by the way. Okay. Pretty full. That's a child who has some good self-regulation skills. Yeah. Okay, so there's word reading and spelling. Let's map the stages of writing development onto that. And so very well established in the literature are these pre-conventional, semi-phonetic, phonetic, and conventional. And in the work that I have done and working with little kids, we have a lot of younger students coming to our educational settings who don't really know the difference between what drawing is and what writing is. And I would submit to you, for those of you who have any experience working with little kids, when they first learn to write their name, they're actually drawing their name. They're drawing the shapes of how those symbols look that they've been seeing. So I added a 0 level where a child does not yet know that distinction between writing and drawing. Okay, so we have pre-conventional. Pre-alphabetic is another term that some folks like to use this. What's the definition of an alphabet? It's a symbol. So here's this visual symbol that represents a sound, and both pieces have to be there. So at the pre-alphabetic stage, we have scribble. What's important about that? It's horizontal. We hope that it goes from left to right, unless you're a left-hander, and then you go off, and that's why those little lefties do that. Mock letters, where there's this recognition. Oh, there's spaces between those things that you see. And then random letter strings. So that's at the pre-alphabetic phase of word reading and spelling. And then kids move into this semi-phonetic stage. What does this say? This is easier. What's that say? Day. And the first word is? You got it. Why did a little friend choose to write the letter W? Or excuse me, the letter Y for what, the sound that W is supposed to represent. Why? One. Using alphabet knowledge. That's a really cool thing. Semi-alphabetic, figuring out that connection between what letters are and the sounds that they represent. That's partial. And then you move into phonetic. You can easily read that. But that little friend in kindergarten has not yet had those spelling patterns taught. But they are totally figuring out what the sounds are and mapping every sound to a letter pattern. That's full alphabetic, and then moving into conventional. So here are the writing tasks that Berninger and Wolf describe as being important in different grade levels. So preschool, you want to know where they're writing, how they're writing their name, what they understand and know about letters, and how their phonological phonemic awareness is developing. Kinder, still, are you writing at hopefully at least a random letter to a phonetic level? Name writing, letter name and sound knowledge, so it's bumping it up. Letter writing, phonological phonemic awareness, how you're understanding the alphabetic principle to be able to decode CVC words, be able to spell CVC words, and then what do you understand and know about writing a sentence? What are some of those print conventions? And so what we can do when we look at children's writing, we can identify how their oral language is developing, such a valuable assessment strategy, how handwriting is coming along, how spelling is coming along, and then what is their composition? And so this is a strategy that I love to talk about. It's picture story, word story. And you draw a line through your paper, you draw a picture up here. And how are children more likely to draw a picture or to write? Oh, draw this picture. Now you have something to write about. So help me figure this out. And how is this child's handwriting? How's the spelling? And how's the composition coming along? So this little friend, I went to the park. And I kinder came. Right? So handwriting, how many of kinders have such a prevalence of writing in uppercase letters? So what does that mean we need to teach them? Let's do lowercase too. Spelling, it's coming along. That little friend has some pretty good phonemic awareness and is mapping. Has some sight word, those high frequency words, and composition. Pretty good, pretty fun little story. Yeah. Okay, later tasks in the primary grades and contrasting primary grades to that the early literacy time period, early reading and writing, and then shifting to reading to learn, reading and writing to learn. So you can see the automaticity and accuracy of alphabet letter writing, connecting that to decoding and spelling of phonetic and high frequency words. Again, phonological phonemic awareness, paragraph writing, organization and content. And then in the later grades, continuing to understand and recognize what the legibility is. And you see what the rest are. Let me see where my time is. Okay. So by fourth grade, and this is from Beringer's research, students should be reliably able to write incomplete sentences. And what our Common Core standards are, or Common Core or standards that states have adopted, they're all fairly similar. But often, those of you who work with second graders and you look at what your standards are they expected to write a full sentence? I mean, that's happening even younger. In kindergarten, start with a capital, end with some punctuation. Yeah. And what brain development is showing is that students are still mastering what causal construction is during those grades. So we have these standards that are saying this. So what does it mean we should do? Teach children how sentences work. You take simple sentences, combine them together into compound sentences, into complex sentences, so that they have an understanding of the structural rule patterns of how language works. Okay? Okay. Got 2 down, 1 more to go. Okay, so instructional strategies that are going to help build foundation skills. And what we want to think about, handwriting, spelling, composition. Those transcription skills and the composition that's going to lead to writing proficiency. And so here's this slide. What do we want to focus on first? What do you want to write about? That gives us an idea of how those underlying or those lower level transcription skills are developing. Okay, so here's to develop a functional pencil grip. What you want to do is put your pencil right in front of you with the point pointing to you. So you put your writing tool in front of you with the point pointing right to you. And then you have a student pick it up with their thumb and first finger, flip it back, and then put that third finger underneath to support it. And that's the motor plan for building a more functional pencil grip. Try doing that. Okay, so that's a recommendation. Paper recommendations. When you're in preschool and you want to write, and you're thinking that's 4-year-old, 4 or 5-year-old, you want me to write and you want me to get it on the line? Too much. So in preschool, you don't need to use lines. They're just figuring out how to shift from drawing letters to writing letters, or drawing to writing. And then as children are more fluid with writing, then add a line. Now you can write on a line. That gives you one layer of orientation and matching up where the orientation is. And then as you are, and this is early preschool, early pre-K, later into pre-K and early kindergarten, And then as children are learning more about the orientation of here's the uppercase and how this one goes from top to bottom and all uppercase are the same height. What's tricky about our orthography is that we have a lot of upper lowercase or lowercase letters that have 4 different starting points when you want to write them. So some are high, some start in the middle, some go underneath the line. And so helping to illustrate and let children know this is how it works is a good thing to do. Okay, so writing instruction, here's what we want to do. When you want to do handwriting instruction of letters, we want to provide a visual plan with numbered arrows for how you make those strokes. Is that a part of your handwriting component? You want to have practice copying letters, writing them from memory, finding letters in ordered alphabet series, building long-term memory, and emphasizing that letters should be both legible, recognizable by others, and automatic. And so when you look at some of these, here's where you start, and here's the plan for how to shape those letters. It's just giving kids information about how this works, instead of having them discern it on their own, because many of them discern it in ways that are not going to be as functional or accurate or legible as what we would like. Okay, and the end goal of handwriting instruction is to create, and generally what happens is hybrid writers. How many of you write a little bit in cursive and write a little bit in manuscript? Yeah, which is absolutely appropriate. But how many of you can actually write in cursive today? Full on cursive. Yeah. So manuscript transfers to word reading. It looks the same as the words that children are learning to read. When you move into a point, cursive writing transfers better to spelling and composition. You work with older students and you still see them having difficulty in discerning which direction am I supposed to write this word or this letter. Cursive provides a better and more fluent flow. A lot of students who are eventually diagnosed as having dyslexia, cursive often is easier for them in that spelling process because of that easier flow. It reduces the number of reversals that might be happening. And keyboarding, what keyboarding does is it helps produce lots of drafts and the revisions. And keyboarding is going to be valuable for students generating ideas when they move beyond the hunt and peck piece. And keyboarding is a piece of what our lives are. It's always going to be there. And what Berninger describes is that keyboarding is bimodal. When you're doing this, when you're actually typing, it's bimodal. So this hand is going off here, this hand is going off here. And that bimodal brain development is one that doesn't happen in early childhood. It happens later into the intermediate grades. So when we're working with writing, what should children be doing? Writing on a keyboard in the computer lab or writing by hand? Writing by hand. And for all of you, let me just say, what the research shows is when you write something by hand, what's that going to do to your opportunity to retain it? It's better. If you type like this, you don't have the same motor input, which is that multisensory connection to retention. So writing by hand is also really important for us. Okay, so there we are. Okay, spelling strategies. Spelling is like that window into our brains to see what we really understand about the structure of language. And invented spelling. How many of you, invented spelling, an easy concept. How many of you have had some kind of concern about having children invent spelling and then being concerned that later on it's going to continue? If you've had that concern, you can just lay it to rest because it's not what the research is identifying. What it does, it helps kids go through that process of learning. And there are some really important children's attempts represent words. Their invented spelling reflects the progression of their phonological awareness, letter knowledge, and their understanding. And it does not interfere with later spelling in subsequent grades. It's a really valuable and important aspect of what's going on in pre-K, kinder, even into first grade. However, when a spelling pattern is taught, then what should we expect in children's writing? Yeah. Okay, so how many of you are familiar with the concept of word study? And what word study does is it includes all of these elements. Look at all those linguistic elements that are a part of. It's encoding, spelling, and decoding of words. So it includes phonemic, morphologic, semantic, orthographic, and then just some words you have to have a mental image of it. So phonologic, that's a kindergartner. Is that little friend who says tar, that's how it's being represented in her writing. Is she on track for kinder speech production? Or would you expect by the time you're 5 and 6, you would be able to say the word star? But you can see how her writing is reflected by her own phonological processing. Okay, how about a little friend writing the word chunk or dream? You've seen this, there's a second grader. What do we know about this little friend's phonemic awareness? Is it on track? Or is there something missing? There's something missing. How about this one? What do you know here? There's a really good assessment. What's that spelling pattern? Getting part of it, but what's missing? One of the phonemes in the word. So that phonological awareness is not where it needs to be. How about some morphologic awareness? Me go to a park. Maybe you heard a little friend say go. Right? Hopefully none of us have ever modeled that for a little friend, but they learn what the morphologic patterns are. Or this little friend said, it's hard for me to memorize. What did she do? Take the word memorize and remember and has an acorn. How about children who lost their parents sometimes live in an orphanarium? Morphologic connections. And you can see that in their writing. This one's a little bit hard to see, but yesterday my dad played soccer. There's a D, a letter D at the end. It's got a little reversal happening there, but you can see where those morphological components from a phonologic perspective are being represented. Okay, how about this one? Penguin loved to go. So some of that morphologic component. How about semantic awareness? I found this on the internet, right? It encapsulates every single one of those spellings. How about this little friend? Kinder learned a little bit about that CK rule, learned a little bit about the silent E rule, matching them together and not exactly knowing when they go together. Still learning orthographic awareness. And sometimes you just have to have a mental orthographic map. Why is it speech and speak? Why is speech 2 E's and why is speak EA? I don't know. You go back etymologically, there's probably some reason, but I don't know. And so here's the recommendation for spelling instruction. So in kindergarten and first grade, you should not have a reading program and a writing program. It should be reading and writing together. The words that children are learning to read are words that they also should be spelling and writing. So encoding, writing down the letters that represent the phonemes in the words, and decoding, linking the sounds that are to printed letters. And they should be practiced alternately in the beginning stages. So you learn to read and spell the same words. In second grade, that begins to pull apart, where children's reading abilities are have moved beyond what the actual spelling pattern instruction has taken place. And so it still should be reinforced, but spelling is much more difficult, moving into those more multisyllabic word opportunities. And how many of you using sound walls instead of word walls? Sounds are consistent. The sound is always going to be the same, and we have a whole variety with our deep orthographic writing structure that represents what those speech sounds are. So some kind of a sound wall, moving away from a word wall, which is not consistent. Okay, and then the last thing that I want to share with you is you having a rubric. How am I doing for time? Okay. pretty close. So a rubric for how you can evaluate what children's writing looks like, looking at the organization, the content, the kind of language that they're using, what they understand about print conventions. So that's your rubric, and you can do that in a pretty simple way of looking at, here's the organization. If it's a narrative, what are the components of it? The content, language, print conventions, and then just a simple sense for you. We need to do some more work. It's developing, or this friend has it in place. And then another really valuable element is to provide a rubric for children so that they're monitoring their own writing. Did I include these things? Which gives them a list of all the things that need to go into what it is that they are writing. And they can monitor their own writing by using some of those aspects and elements. And these examples are adapted from Step Up to Writing, another program that focuses intentionally on how to teach the writing process. So for all of you who get to work in classrooms, work with teachers, here's some look-fors teaching writing. Is there an assessment process that you have in place to determine where children's development of their alphabet knowledge, both letter names and sounds, the developmental writing level, and composition writing? So what are they doing in writing the letters? How are they using letters to begin to shape words, and then putting those words into a composition? Is there explicit, systematic, and sequenced instruction combining reading and writing, particularly in the early grades? Is there a use of appropriate word recognition and spelling skills based on the children's age, children's background, what their learning is, and the skill level of the groups that you're working with? Routines in the classrooms, sound symbol cards, letter formation cards, to help kids distinguish name, remember how to write the letters. You have a letter strip that's easily accessible to children who are in pre-K, kinder, even into first grade. The words used for beginning phonics and spelling instruction that students know or incidentally defines or puts them into a context to enhance meaning. So if you're reading the word rut, may be familiar or maybe not, but you have that incidental conversation. Who knows what a rut is? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that deep depression when there's muddy. And then a systematic approach with scaffolding of modeling, supported practice, and independent practice. So we got through these big pieces, foundations. So what do you think? Is handwriting important? Yeah. Spelling important? Yeah. Print conventions important? Yeah. And all of that's going to lead to composition and writing proficiency. So writing is a really critical skill. Handwriting and spelling facilitate composition. Early intervention is a key in reducing the impact of oral and written language challenges like dyslexia, dysgraphia, and explicit instruction at all levels is a proven, evidence-based, research-based approach for teaching writing. So, thanks. How much do we have any time for questions? Yeah. Not much.
We should take it. Tracy, do you have some questions?
Okay.
Is there research that states whether preschoolers should learn capital or lowercase letters?
Okay, is there
You're
research?
gonna do it.
Is there research, so should children learn uppercase or lowercase letters first? Yes. There's developmental research that shows what young children typically learn when they're recognizing letters, and what do they generally learn first? Uppercase. And then lowercase. Uppercase is more, I think there's an environmental aspect to it. You look at an alphabet book and which letter is going to be more prevalent or more prominent, the uppercase or the lowercase? The uppercase is. So in general, kids learn uppercase letters. They also learn lowercase letters. So that's developmental, what's happening. But in our instruction, what should we be doing? Teaching them together. There's interleaving that conversation, so you can look at a capital letter C and a lowercase letter C and say, "Whoa, look, these are the same." How about B? Capital B, lowercase letter B. They're different. This lowercase letter B is missing a bump. And that conversation that goes back and forth, it helps just integrate so much of that learning. So a letter instruction should include the name, the uppercase, lowercase letter shape, the sound that that letter represents, having an anchor picture that goes along with that letter with the most common sound connection, what's going on with your mouth, which I think is even more important now after kids experienced growing up with masks. And then the sixth component is writing it. That's what a letter, that's what the research is currently supporting. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I hope you have some squares and some things going around and some important points.
You know, sometimes you get to kind of be speechless, like in the world of education. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. I feel like I learned so much. I literally, Dr. Hart Paulson was sitting there with our product, thinking about like when we first did our call with you, we changed our books, and we added in tons of writing to them because the first call I had with you, you kept talking about the connections between reading and writing. I feel like today you solidified it so much so that when I looked at our take homes, I was like, oh my gosh, we got to keep adding to them. It's so beautiful. That was powerful, wasn't it? When you think about reading and writing and the connections and cursive and handwriting and spelling and how they support each other. So what I want to kind of walk you through, Pam, you're going to run it sounds like over there, yeah? Or do you want me to run it? I'll run it. It's okay. I got it. Is that we have tried very hard at Just Right Reader for two things. One is that we feel very special and fabulous and unique to do moments like this. Like we love to learn. And I was a principal for over 20 years, and I craved days like this where I got to leave the building and just learn, or even be in the building and think about what I was doing. So when we started Just Right Reader, we added in a component based around professional development, because we know that we talk to people like Matt Burns and Lucy Hart Paulson literally all the time. Like she helped us devise our product. But a big part of our vision was it shouldn't just be researchers talking to us, but us bringing them out into the field so that they could talk to you all around. There are over 1,000 people listening online right now. I have to tell you, just as much as it is about we want to support kids with wonderful decodables, we feel fabulous that today there's over 1,000 people learning with us, with Dr. Berry, with Lucy Hart Paulson. Like that is powerful and beautiful, and you should feel like a beautiful movement happening in this room. So I was a principal for 20 years. They would put me in the, it would move me around the district a lot because I was a groupie for reading. I would go into a school and focus on reading, and our achievement would rise. I have to tell you, the reason we started Just Right Reader is because my own daughter had a hard time learning how to read. Here I was working so hard in the school I was at, focusing on reading, and she was struggling. I started reading with her at home. And I have to tell you, the books that I kept bringing home from school were just like, they were so uninviting, they were so unengaging, and they were so boring. And I just felt like we could do better. I started calling researchers all around the country to ask these questions of like, if you were to develop a decodable, what would it look like? So these are the decodables that we made at Just Right Reader based around me talking to these amazing researchers all around the country, including Dr. Hart Paulson, including Ray Ritzel, including Heidi Ann Mesmer, including Alfred Tatum, to think about what we could do around the science of reading. We talked to Julia Lindsay. She's the leading expert on the science of reading and small group instruction. Julia helped us create all of our lesson plans. That's what she does. Julia still goes into classrooms and tests out lesson plans with kids. Alfred Tatum, he is so magical. He's coming up and doing another symposium very soon. And his main research is thinking about African-American and Latino kids and how can we combine, what does it look like for those students to really continue to raise the rigor, and how do we do that? What does that instruction look like? Elsa Hagen helped us create our bilingual books, creating biliterate individuals. We have Science of Reading Spanish decodables. Elsa helped us create them along with Doris Baker and the University of Texas at Austin. Heidi Ann Mesmer, if you are thinking about decodables, you've got to talk to Heidi. That is all she thinks about. That's what her research is all about. And Doris and Ray Reitzel, if you are someone who comes to all of our symposiums, you know we love Ray's research. We think he's amazing thinking about letters and sounds. When we started making our decodables, a huge part of our vision was that they could be representative of the classrooms and the kids that we educate and we feel so passionately about. We didn't want to just do dinosaurs. We didn't want to just do birds and dogs and cats. We felt that we could do something deeper in our decodables and represent the kids in America's classrooms, telling the authentic stories of kids. One of my favorites is Kayla Skates, just a really cute little girl who skates around her neighborhood. Kids have powerful stories and everyday stories of their lives, and we feel very lucky that our decodables are representative of kids. They're mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors into their lives. All of our decodables are based around the science of reading with the idea that if you can teach kids their letters and their sounds, guess what? They'll learn to read. We are right now in ESSA level 4 and soon to be ESSA level 2 because we have studies out there happening right now that we're very proud of, and we can't wait to bring them to you. A huge part of our decodables, when you look at them on the very first page of all of our decodables, it goes through the letter sound that we're working on. Julia Lindsay was very clear about this. Heidi Ann Mesmer said, Sarah, the most important thing you can do is tell kids what the letter sound you're working on. We want to be clear. We want to be explicit. It's good for teachers. It's good for kids. And it's good for parents. Everyone should know very clearly, this is the letter sound that we're working on. And I just want to say, we did that in Spanish and we did that in our English decodables with the idea that, listen, this is something like, be clear. All right, so remember I've been a principal for over 20 years. I used to tell teachers to send books home and they'd be like, nope, my mom's brother's dog's gonna eat it. I can't send any books home. You won't buy me more books, Sarah. I'd be like, no, I swear, I'll buy you more books, I'll buy you. And they'd be like, nope, we're gonna lose them. And I'd be like, it's okay, we'll lose them. And then I would often tell kids, like when parents came to school, they'd be like, how do I help? What do I do? And I'd be like, oh, you should read with your child, right? How often, many times did we used to just say that? Just read with your child. Well, there's more to that. What I found as a principal is that parents really wanted to help their child and they just literally were not sure how. So when we created our decodables, we added into the back of every single decodable a QR code that you scan and it links to a phonics video in both Spanish and English. A huge part of that vision was 3 things. One, that when you go home, parents want to help their child, and this supports it. 2, kids forget everything, right? You heard Dr. Hart Paulson talking about that interleaving. Interleaving is reminding kids so they hit it a second time, a third time, a fourth time. We want to reinforce that instruction. And then the third thing for us was, you know what? So often we don't have, just like Dr. Berry was talking about, we're trying so hard to get fabulous teachers in the classroom, and it's really hard right now. So we need other supports in the classroom. So we added in this video that now I've been moving all around the country. And what I'm finding is that teachers are using it as a second adult in the room. Kids are going, they're watching the video, and then they're reading the book in English, right? Or they're reading the book in Spanish. So the video is being the first, another supportive instruction, and then the practice happens in the book. That interleaving of happening, it happened many times, is really helpful. The other thing that happened, and I have to say this was not our goal. Our intention was not to create a video that would just support kids. It started being that parents were watching the video in Spanish to support the reading instruction that was happening for their child and learning to read right alongside them. Absolutely beautiful. Not our goal, but a fabulous thing that happened for us as we watched. The most important thing I think as we go is we're a supplement. Our decodables are a supplement to the instruction that's happening in the room. This is just like Dr. Berry talked about, that instruction with that teacher that is very powerful, that is super important, and kids need practice. We created the most decodables on the market because we want kids to have more practice, right? The more that you're practicing something, the better off you get at it in reading and in writing. So we are aligned to all of the phonics curriculums out there with the idea that we provide you with that alignment because we want this to feel easy for everyone, easy for teachers, easy for principals, and easy for kids, right? Here's the book I use to practice my short U. We are so lucky that we are working with UFly to make sure that our books are on the UFly adopted list, the UFly endorsed list, and it should be coming out in the next 2 to 3 weeks that will be on that list. And a huge thank you to Dr. Burns for helping us kind of make sure that that alignment was very clear, super easy, and that all Florida classrooms and anyone using UFly could just instantly be like, we got it, it's here. Here's how this fits right into UFly. I want to just walk you through really quickly, and if you're here in the room, go ahead and pull out the sample in front of you. We have what we decide is 2 products. We have our decodables that go into classrooms that we all know are so important that kids get that practice. You heard Dr. Hart Paulson talking about that. And then we have a take-home decodable box pack. So I want to kind of walk you through that we have our classroom libraries. That makes total sense to everyone in this room. You're going to buy decodables. They're going to go into your classrooms. In a kindergarten classroom, she's got her decodables. In a first grade classroom, she's got her decodables. Everyone gets to practice their phonics skills with our decodables that are aligned to their core curriculum in their classroom. We have those in Spanish and we have those in English. I want to walk you through the product that I find is just a little bit different. It's a product that we have that no one else has on the market. I bet because I was a principal, I know how powerful this is. So we have what are take-home decodable packs. They're literally designed to feel like a present. Districts send us their reading data. We'll take any data you have, literally any data you have, and you'd be amazed how all around the country, everyone has different data. We push it into our data algorithm. It comes out with the 10 decodable books that a child needs at exactly their reading data intentional level. We then literally, are you ready for this? We put a child's name on the box. The teacher, on Friday, she gets a box with 22 little packs in it, right? With each of her children's name on it. On Monday, she passes them out, has a beautiful, fabulous, like your birthday with decodables, Christmas with decodables. Like it just feels magical in the classroom. They all open them. And then she even can start doing small groups. We give her a lesson plan along with it. It has a spot for writing because we all know, we heard Dr. Hart Paulson tell us today about writing. And then they read them with the classroom for 2 weeks. And guess what? They go home. She now has decodables in her home that she can reinforce and keep reading and rereading for that little child. Her mom can help her. Her parent can help her. She's got it in the home. We added in writing pages to every single one of our take-home decodable packs. If you look at the very back, there are writing pages along with it. As we heard Dr. Hart Paulson talk about that power of writing, literally I was listening to you thinking, oh my gosh, I want to add more writing pages in, right? The power of writing. I heard you say something that was so powerful, writing within decoding and encoding, and the writing needs to support the reading that they're doing. So our writing pages reinforce whatever that letter sound there is that they're working on at just that moment. Here's some writing practice to go along right beside it. We added in, we moved our QR code from the back of the books for our take-homes to the front of the books. We wanted it to be so easy, so clear, like here it is, here's the lesson that you should listen to your phonics lesson. And we added in a backpack. When Fort Bend said, we're gonna buy these, they said, I want kids moving all around school and all around home with the decodables. So we added a backpack in. They could take them to their bus. They could take them to the bathroom. They could take them to recess. They could take them when they go in their car, like wherever they are. Now kids have a backpack along with it. And a lot of districts are doing what's called outcome-based purchasing. Absolutely beautiful, brilliant, like we decided that if achievement goes up, there's a better outcome for kids, and like they base their funding on it, right? When that happened, everyone talked about interleaving, continuously having kids read and reread. Julia Lindsay went back and she told me, Sarah, I want kids reading these books, these decodables 4 to 6 times. We added on high 5 reading to our take homes so that every time a child reads it, they color it in on the back, right? That repetition, that interleaving is really good. That's the science of learning, not necessarily the science of reading. But I hope what you're hearing is it's all research-based. We're constantly talking to educators and researchers to learn what should we be doing to make it powerful for kids. I want to walk you through around the country what different districts all around the country are doing with our take-home packs. Dallas did something really beautiful. For all of their reading teachers, they bought a pack, a library, and then they literally bought a pack for every child who was an MTSS child that they're worried about. Brilliant, fabulous, 11 rounds, right? So we have 11 rounds of these in both Spanish and English, and remember, they're based on data. Fulton County did something absolutely beautiful, absolutely brilliant. They have transformation schools is what they call them. And they were like, we're really worried about our transformation schools. So for every single transformation school, they bought pre-K to 5th grade, 11 rounds of books for kids, and for every classroom libraries. They went from 11 transformation schools on the state list down to 4, and I haven't heard what the outcome is this year. We love that, absolutely brilliant. Hillsborough bought the summer packs for every child in summer school in Spanish and English, 1 for each week of summer school, and then 1 to go home at the end, 5 packs during summer. Cypress Fairbanks, they bought back to school review packs. So every single kindergartner got a back to school review pack. Fabulous, wonderful. Charlotte Mecklenburger School District, we are so excited. They have decided this year they are going to buy for every kinder to 5th grader packs, 11 rounds of packs for every single kid in the district. Brilliant, fabulous. Like, again, our intention is to always be your partner to raise student achievement. Cincinnati did something beautiful. They bought English language learner packs. For every English language learner, they bought a pack in English and a pack in Spanish if the child was learning Spanish, if the child was their home language was Spanish. This should feel easy. So in addition to you getting the decodable books, we add in also activities for families, a caregiver letter. We added in for teachers, lesson plans, a quick start guide so it makes it easy to implement. And for the administration, we added in our phonics progression. Like, we just made this so easy. For districts that make a district-wide implementation, we instantly will make you a video so that all of the teachers know how to use it. We want this to feel easy for kids, easy for teachers, and easy for administrators, right? That's the whole vision. If it's easy, guess what? We all will use it. Our pre-emergent books. Dr. Hart Paulson, I think you helped us create this. And Ray Reitzel also was really emphatic. You heard her talk today about letter formation, the importance of that letter formation. We added into all of our pre-emergent books a page where kids can practice their letter formation, their dry erase pages, because the more they practice, they can wipe it off, start all over again. These are based on multi-componential reading. There's a video for letter, a video for sound, and a video for letter formation. That reading-writing connection. I love that what we did was every single one of our lesson plans ends with a writing part to it. It begins with a writing part. That reading-writing connection, you really, like, we heard you. We did a call with Lucy, and literally after that, we redid all of our lesson plans. We feel very powerful because we're a mid-sized company now. I can't say I'm a small company, but we're still not a Scholastic. So literally when a researcher tells us something that we think is good for kids, we go back and we change our product instantly to keep evolving and making it sure that it's better and better for kids. I want to take 1 second to show you. Pam, do you mind? Here, you got it. Something that beautiful that happened, and we're having it happen all around the country now, is the districts told us, we really want a message to go out from our superintendent to kids. Like, we want it to be that our superintendent talks to families, because we all know that as reading gets better, math gets better, science gets better. So Cincinnati made this video that is so beautiful, and districts all around the country are starting to make it.
Hello, families of our ELL students. I am Superintendent Ironetta Wright.
And I'm Board President Ben Lindy. We are so excited to share how together we can make this summer a summer of reading.
There is a lot of research about the science of reading, and the best thing you can do as a family is read together.
To help many of our families and students, our team will be visiting neighborhoods this summer to distribute books.
Students will receive a backpack of decodable books by Just Right Reader, and they will be able to practice reading in English and Spanish all summer long. Every time your child reads one of their books, it keeps their phonics skills strong so they're ready for the year ahead.
These books are fun, colorful, and tell stories that get kids excited to read and then keep reading.
Plus, every book comes with a memorable video that teaches a phonics skill. Just scan the QR code on the back of the book to watch the video in English or Spanish.
Have your child add their name on their Just Right Reader backpack. Fill it with their books and bring the power of reading everywhere they go.
Every bit of reading counts, and we can't wait to hear about your child's favorite books. Be sure to share your reading adventures on social media with the hashtag Cincinnati Readers. Enjoy and happy reading.
Dr. Wright, she actually, wasn't she, right? Yeah. We all know her in this room because she's like kind of rock star and she was something fabulous here. Then she went to Detroit and then she ended up in Cincinnati, right? So anyways, we all know how fabulous she is. She started this for us and then got tons of positive phone calls. Their office was blowing up with positivity. And what we actually said to, as a company, was if we could create more positive moments where superintendents got to be part of that connection with families, we wanted to do it. So for Ironetta, we added into all of the backpacks that went out, the video from Ironetta and her school board president. There was a QR code in every single backpack that families watched. And I just think it was great for her. It was great. And we want to do that for districts everywhere, right? If there's a positive family connection to reading with a district, fabulous. Another great thing, right? What I want to show you is something that we actually created. I'm going to go. So our high interest chapter decodables, you probably have heard Laura Tortorelli speak for us. She talks about multisyllabic connections that for the second to fifth graders and for English language learners, a huge part that they're still working on is that syllabication. That's what's holding them back, is syllabication. So when we designed our high interest chapter decodables for older kids, we made them bigger, for one. And for two, they are all about nonfiction books, mysteries, like there's something a little bit catchier, and they focus on syllabication because that's what's holding older kids back from really like jumping to a whole other level in their reading. Our books are printed and made in the US. I gotta tell you, as a principal, I had so many budget cuts. And every time I kind of thought to myself, if all the businesses just put money into the US spots all around them, we wouldn't have budget cuts. So it's super intentional. Like, we print our books, we make our books, every part of it happens here in the US for money to go back to American schools. Our Spanish decodables are just about to come out. So if you are looking for, the other thing I'm gonna tell you is I was a dual immersion principal. And so often I would buy something for my English classrooms. Has this happened to anyone in the room? And then my Spanish classrooms would just be hurt, like literally hurt and upset that I didn't buy something for them. Well, there was nothing to buy for them. So as soon as we did our company, and I feel like our decodables in English were fabulous and wonderful, our team moved and we hired a whole team to create Spanish decodables, a whole different team, because I knew that kids deserved it, teachers deserved it, and families deserved it. These are created by bilingual teachers with the whole cultural competency vision behind is like, let's create something that supports kids and honors them. I have to tell you, Brandy called me, Dr. Barry called me, like, I don't even remember when. And she was like, Sarah, I have a grant. We want board books. And I was like, okay. And the team created board books specifically for Duval. We got to create it with Duval, and we are so excited that we created board books for students 0 to 3. And this is not something that just Duval wants. Like literally what we found was all around the country, people said, we want to start earlier. We believe that we can get kids and families reading if we start earlier. Montgomery County up in Maryland said to me, Sarah, we have to do something. These hold the same symbolism that we think is powerful and important for kids. They support the kids in your classroom so they can see themselves in books. They have a back where you have a sign language part to it. And these also have videos in Spanish and English for families. Again, what do I do to help my child become a stronger, more confident reader, even at 0 to 3 stage? What are the activities I should do? We have a video that goes along with that for families. And I think the most powerful part of these books, and I didn't realize even when the team started doing them, is their activities. So as a family, like, what do I do to help my child? Here's a book that tells you how to do tummy time. Here's a book that gives you the activity of I Spy. Like, it makes it easy and you're reading, and now you have something to help your child. All right. I got to tell you all about the fabulousness and how we base it all on research. And now we get to go back to the research and continue learning more and more and more. Dr. Burns, it's on my phone. I'm not going to pull it up. So we all know that he's a complete rock star, has published like mad. He is supporting the University of Florida and UFly to just continue basing every decision in their phonics curriculum based on research. And every time I have watched Dr. Burns present, it is so clear, so concise, and so based on what is best for kids. I think we are so excited to have him here today. So Dr. Burns, will you come
awesome.
Share all your fabulous knowledge with us?
Great, thank you.
We're really glad you're here.
Thanks for having me here. Awesome. Good, thank you. All right, good afternoon. I'm sitting back there listening to these women present, thinking this is really fun, this is really great. Like, oh, that's right, I got to go up and present in a minute here, don't I? Geez, I probably ought to get ready for that. This has really been fun. Oh, thanks. Really been fun. I'm glad to be part of this and to be part of this very cool panel. So today we've heard a couple different perspectives, obviously, and I loved Dr. Berry's starting us off with that formula. So I tend to focus on the research and the assessment part of that formula. So that's probably what I'm spend most time on today because I think the others have been hit very well. So I'm going to talk today real briefly here about what I call rights without levels. Creating groups with data. And I'm going to touch real briefly on science of teaching reading. So this is a big study I did with Nell Duke and Kelly Cartwright. We looked at 350 articles, 350 studies of reading instruction, and wanted to see what produces good reading comprehension. Because it's one thing if we teach kids how to decode, that's great, but they're then not able to go apply that and understand what they're reading. Well, that's just a step in the process then. And we found what you want to look for here is it's a little hard to see this number here for the good average readers and for the striving readers. And I'm only putting this up here. A good effect is 0.8, 0.4, 0.5 is okay. The only reason I put that up there is for you to see what we're talking about. There's a lot going on. We talk about the science of reading. There's all these different components. And yes, absolutely, without good phonics instruction, we see a significant and moderate effect here for good readers, but a nice effect for the more striving readers. But if you're not doing fluency, if you're not doing text structure or language structure, or even comprehension strategies, there's a good chance you're probably not meeting the needs of all your kids. So when we talk about the science of reading, it's a big area. And we tend to cut off, researchers, myself being one of them, cut off a small piece of it and focus on that our whole career. And some people say, well, they don't really do science of reading work like, someone does research in text structure. Well, that's not really science of reading. Oh, yes, it is. Absolutely it is. So we're just diving into a couple pieces of it. And the piece I want to dive into today is levels. Now, we love levels in reading, don't we? I mean, come on, the DRA, the Fontes and Pinnell, the Jerry Johns, and by God, you speak poorly of those and you will start a fight. Trust me, I've been on the other side of that. The idea of instructional level literally came from 1946. Betts observed a bunch of kids reading and said, you know what? I'm exaggerating only slightly in how anecdotal this was. Kids read better if they can read about 95% of the words correctly. And from that observation, which makes sense, right? Vygotsky's talked about zone of proximal development, Gravois and Gickling talked about all this. It makes sense. But the problem was in 1946, when he made that anecdotal observation, this happened. Okay, follow along as I read this to you, please. Long radians were forming when Matthew arrived. He tried to fin date the amount of time it would take to get to the corn forester. Vort would be too long, plast, he would miss the game. He vraxated for a moment until the radians became even longer. He decided he will Ojo in the radian, open C Vort, it would start moving more expeditiously. No sooner had he started Flegel when it began open motionally quite hard. Matthew became disgusted, zipped up his Hornerforger, and walked back to his car. He drove home old the Mostro. By the time he put the car in the garage, the Mostro was joined and the Fadius was out. Matthew was doubly disgusted now. Suddenly, he went inside to watch the game. He turned on the television set, but nothing happened. And Matthew said to himself, what a lousy fool. How many of you honestly think you know what that's about? Any of you? How many of you, after the second sentence, stopped caring what it was about? Based on my all-time favorite study, Ed Gickling in 1978. Ed Gickling observed a bunch of kids who were LD in writing. Learning to, writing, that was funny. I have writing in my brain right now. LD in reading. Just observed them, fourth graders, learning disabled in reading, just watched them. And he saw that they were, it's a little hard to see, they were on task about 2/3 of the time. They were comprehending about half of what they, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. They were completing 2/3 of their tasks, on task half the time, understanding about 20% of what they read. Pretty typical, right? He then started playing with the levels, and he used material in which the kids could read 85% of the words. It's a little disjointed there. I'm not sure why that happened. But then we see that comprehension stayed about the same. Their task completion actually went down. Their comprehension stayed about the same. Nothing really exciting. But then he used material in which the kids could read 93 to 97% of the words. Fourth graders, fourth grade material, they could actually read the words and look at that. Well, duh. Comprehension went up. If you can't read it, you can't comprehend it. Task completion went up. But look at time on task, over 90%. Then they did something brilliant. They used 100%. The kids could read every single word on the page. No new information, all easy stuff they know, really easy, but still grade level material, right? Like still appropriate for a fourth grader, content-wise. And this happened. Sure, comprehension and completion stayed high, but look at time on task. Back down to where it started. The level at which a child, the match between student ability, student skills, student background knowledge, student vocabulary, and what they're reading is critically important. What's great about decodables is that's built into it, because you will have already learned everything on that page, or it's the new thing you're reviewing. Great. But oftentimes in schools, we attempt to find this difficulty, which Ed defined as 93 to 97%. So kids need to read 93 to 97% of the words. That 5-finger rule, that's great if they're reading 100 words. But if they put 4 fingers down and there's only 20 words on the page, that's too hard. So he defined the instructional level that way. And the problem is that we know reading groups, I'm going to get to this point, I'll come back to that in a second. The problem is that, that's out of order. When Betts made that observation, he and a student of his started building informal reading inventories, like the Jerry Johns Basic Reading Inventory, the Fontes Pinnell, the DRA, all of those, and many others. And it's, you know what they are. It's where you have a kid read passages at particular levels and try to find the one that's the right level for that kid. Now, the problem is we tend to use those for creating small groups. And creating small groups is critically important. Small group instruction allows for differentiation. The problem is we've, for years, based it on aptitude, right? Good readers, the Red Robins, Bluebirds, all that stuff. But we really see good within grouping, within classroom grouping, based on skill, can really help pretty much every ability group, but especially the struggling readers, especially the lower readers. So we want to do that. But I'm not convinced that those IRIs really tell us what we need to know, because level doesn't equal skill. I'll tell you why I say that. So I want to focus on skill. Well, it's hard to see. So I'll just talk about this real quickly. We did a study. When the Fontes Pinal benchmark assessment system, I have no idea what assessments you use in your schools. I searched the assessment website for Duval County Public Schools, got a decent sense, I think, of what's going on in this district. I'm not really sure what's happening in your schools, because I've learned that sometimes what happens in the actual schools might be different than what's on the district website. So anyway, not saying that's true here, but I've seen that in other schools. Anyway, so I have no idea what you're using. So I did study the Fontes Pinal benchmark assessment system when it first came out. And I wanted to see, they claim on page like 11 that you can use this test for screening. Oh, okay, so let's check it out. So there's three measures up there. Am I just showing you the one? I'm just showing you the one. So there's two measures up there. There is the MAP, NWEA MAP, Measures of Academic Progress for Reading. It's a good reading test. Now, teachers will say, that test doesn't tell me much about helping my kid. No, you're right, it's not supposed to. Remember the purposes of assessment that Dr. Berry showed this morning? That's a screener. That is not a diagnostic. It is not designed to help you. Now, I will say, if you're a teacher and you look at your grades, your classroom's overall score in certain areas and stuff, I think that can be helpful. But for the most part, it's not designed to do that. So yeah, I used it as a screener. It's a good screener. And then I used the Fontes Pinal. And basically, the gist of it is this. There were 556 kids in second and third grade who did well on the MAP. And of those, 367 of them did well on the F&P, which is 66%. So think of it like a grade. Yeah, that's passing, I guess. That's a D, I suppose. But look at the kids who didn't do well on the MAP. 290 of them, only 90 of them didn't do well in the F&P, which is 31%, which is horribly low. Overall correct classification of 54%, which means you could buy this test for thousands of dollars. You can give it to all your teachers, train them how to use it, which takes a lot of time. Take 20 or 30 minutes per kid, or and you'll get it right just as often. I actually think the Fontes Pinal was not designed to be a screener. I think it's a different purpose, but that's a different conversation. So the levels you get, they tend to be inaccurate. We also found that among the good readers, they probably underestimated their reading skills. But among the low readers, the striving readers, it overestimated their skill, and they couldn't read the book that was at their level. If the test said they were a D, we gave them a D book, and they couldn't read it, over half of them. So that's a problem. But the other problem for today's conversation really is this. I said earlier, level doesn't equal skill. Now, those two were studies. This was just talking to a teacher, and she was showing me how important levels were for grouping kids. So I literally just said, hey, give me your Excel spreadsheet. And I went to the middle and just grabbed a section who are all Gs. G, I forget what grade this is, honestly, second grade maybe? Does that sound right? So G, these are all the Gs. Okay, so I just grabbed that section. I did not manipulate these data in any other way. This is their MAP rate. I don't know what the heck a RIT is. I mean, I know what it is, but if someone says, my kid got a RIT of 185, I have no idea what that means. So I look at it by percentile rank. Okay, so that's what this is. So this kid's 27th percentile, lowest end of the average range. These are all fairly, they're all pretty much, with one exception, at or below the 25th percentile. So they're scoring low on that test. The oral reading fluency from, I think this was Dibbles, Ames Webb, Fastbridge, whatever. And then this is the accuracy, percentage of words read correctly. So all these kids that have a G, you're telling me this kid right here and this kid have the same reading needs? 73rd percentile, 80 words a minute, 98% correct versus first percentile, 26 words a minute, 93% correct? Have the same reading needs? Probably not. Pick any two kids up there. This kid, 19, 70, 100%. First, 17, 77. They don't have the same reading needs. Level doesn't equal skill. So we have to assess skill. Here's another reason why, real briefly, and I'll move on from this point, is pretty sure I'm, by the way, standing between you and lunch. So I will not let you go hungry for long. Um, there's this concept of standard error of measure, right? If you take a test and the test says you get 105, well, you don't really have 105. You have somewhere between like 100 and 110. And we give you that test 100 times, you'll score in that range 95% of the time, right? It's a true score. We don't know what your true score is. Well, the standard error of measure, we call that standard error of measure, for the font system, and I'm picking on the font system for now, but I would argue the same is true for DRA and others, is plus or minus 2 based on research we've done. So a kid's F is somewhere between a D and an H, and a kid who scores a J is somewhere between an L and an H. So if my teacher says, well, I gave the kid, he was an F earlier, now he's a J, isn't that exciting? No. Psychometrically speaking, those are the same score. They're within the standard error of measure. So if we think G is a meaningful term, well, we have to, well, let's pick the one. F is a meaningful score, well, we have to remember it could be an H tomorrow, could be a D the day after that. And we have to take that into account when we're thinking about it. So that's why I just don't think level is the way to go. Instead, we assess individual skills and use data, and always come back to start with the big five. So I always come back to when in doubt. Now, if it's a kindergarten teacher, this distinction isn't as important because it's going to be a lot of phonemic awareness. If it's a high school teacher, it's a lot of comprehension, fluency. Yeah, sure, I get that. But actually, I would argue the older the kids are, the more important differentiating is. Because it's quite common in research I've done to have high school kids who can't decode to a basic level, like about half of the kids. So if we have a third of the kids who are struggling, which this is from memory, a third of the kids in 9th and 10th grade who scored low on the map in reading, about half of them couldn't decode to a basic level. So if that's the case, you got to really be hitting decoding for those kids. So I'm going to start with the big five, right? Phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension. That's my framework I'm going to start with. And I'm first going to see what's their foundational area. What area are they still really struggling in? And I'm going to find the most fundamental area in which the kid isn't proficient and start there. So I have these, I tend to group vocabulary and comprehension together because in intervention and instruction, it's really hard to tease those two things apart. If you're working on comprehension, you really should be teaching vocabulary. And if you're teaching vocabulary, you're teaching comprehension, right? So I tend to group those two things together. So just pick some assessments, right? Comprehension is star reading, MAP, almost any group administered measure of reading is a measure of comprehension, usually, especially for older kids. Fluency, any curriculum-based measurement of oral reading fluency. Dibbles, Ames-Webb, FastBridge, Easy CBM, Acadians. Decoding, spelling is a great measure of decoding, as is nonsense word fluency. Don't cringe. Some of you did. I know you did, because I used to. As a reading person, nonsense word fluency kind of drives me insane because it's not reading, but it's not supposed to be reading. It's a measure of how well you can sound out those words. Think of it that way, use it that way, and it's good. It's quite good. But don't overinterpret the data. But if you want to know if a kid can decode, that's a great way to know. Spelling is too. I'll come back to that in a few minutes. And then phonemic awareness, any segmenting, blending assessment, any first sound, initial sound, fluency assessment, those types of things are all phonemic awareness. So if I'm going to want to differentiate my kids, now again, if you're in kindergarten, you won't start this level, you probably start with phonemic awareness. If you're in high school, you might start with comprehension and really just fluency, maybe decoding. So just for ease of demonstration, I'm going to walk through all of them. So I say I've got a kid who scores low on comprehension on whatever measure you use. I'll look at their fluency skills. If they're low on comprehension but good fluency, we know that's their target. If they're low on comprehension, low on fluency, and then we screen their decoding skills, assess decoding. If comprehension is low and fluency is low, if they have good decoding, this is their target. Comprehension is low, fluency is low, we look at decoding and that's low. Look at phonemic awareness. Low, 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 good phonemic awareness, we know this is their target. And then low on all four, really hit phonemic awareness. This is really important for the kids who are still striving readers. Now, when I say focus on, I don't mean exclusively. I don't mean exclusively. I mean, let's see. if I give you an example here. By the way, I do love that you start by telling them what they're going to teach. I teach my undergrads, please start every lesson by telling the kids what you're going to teach and why it's important. So let's say you're doing a phonics intervention. I'm sorry, I work with kids with special needs quite a bit. The phonics instruction, you'll probably start with a 1 or 2 minute phonemic awareness warm-up. Great. You might review basic letter sounds. Great. Then at the end, you're absolutely going to have them read decodable text. Talk about that in a minute. You might even ask them questions about what they read. Absolutely. So when I say focus on phonics, I don't mean exclusively. What I mean is this. If I've got kids who can't decode and I group them up together, I don't want to spend my time reading a book with them and talking about what the book means. I want to spend time teaching them basic decoding. So we're going to focus on this, and I'll skip this for time's sake. I did this talk for administrators once, which I guess a lot of people in this room and online are probably administrators. And they said, we need flowcharts. We think better with flowcharts. So I made a flowchart. But it's the same thing. Comprehension, proficient, core instruction. Low, assess fluency. Fluent, intervene for comprehension. Low, assess phonics, etc. All right, but the real quick way you can cheat is to look at accuracy. A lot of schools have these types of data. They do star and dibbles, right? Or MAP and AimsWeb or Acadians or something like that. That's a lot of data. That's a lot. Schools spend too much time, in my opinion, collecting data and not enough actually using the data. Amanda Vanderheyden and Wes Bonifay and I did a study a couple years ago, and we found schools range every seasonal benchmark period just in reading alone. About 3, usually a little 2 was, I guess, the average, 2 point something, to as many as 9. Oh, God. Schools were assessing reading 3 times a year, 9 times each. So 27. That's too much. But this is pretty typical, and those are good data. You've got some good data to start with. So what I've done here is just the red means that they score low on that particular measure, okay, just to make it easy. Now, what I do want you to look at, though, is accuracy. That is so important. As Dr. Hart Paulson said earlier, we start with accuracy first. That's true in reading, too. Get the kids accurate first. If they can't read 93% of the words correctly, they're probably struggling to break the code of that passage or book. If they can't read 93% of the words correctly, they probably can't read it. They're struggling to break that code. So I look at the data here, and again, this is MAP, dibbles, let's say, or Acadians, and then this is percent accuracy. So let's start with student number 606, right here. Low MAP, low fluency, 89% correct. Okay, so he's low MAP, which is comprehension, low fluency, and low accuracy. So he really needs decoding. We're going to start there, decoding. Look at student number 620. Low comprehension, low fluency, but his accuracy is good. He probably needs fluency building. So that's enough to begin with. So I'm going to take that kid during a small group instruction, and we're going to do fluency building activities for that kid. Now, once you get them identified, like this kid here, decoding, I then want to go back and see where they are in the decoding sequence. And you can send all your data to Just Right Reading, and they do some mysterious assessment that I really want to learn because it makes my head hurt trying to do that. Take all the data you send, take whatever data you send and put it into a sequence. I don't know how to do that quite to that level. So I'll take my sequence. And by the way, the sequence they gave is quite good. Just use whatever sequence you have and go back and assess. So I've given you a couple examples up here. So the one I use, here's an example. Start with letter sound correspondence up to short vowel digraphs, etc. So we assess to see if the kids identify as decoding, where are they here? Okay. Oh, it's hard to see. I'll explain it. That's okay. Just look for the red again. Okay. Just look for the red. So I've got these kids. I think they're in 2nd grade. Yep. They're in 2nd grade. And these kids in red are low on the MAP, okay? No, star. These kids they're all low in fluency. I'm not sure why these aren't red. Oh, I know why. And then they're below 90% accuracy. Now, if they're below 93% accuracy, well, let's start this way. So these kids, they're low in the map, or a star in this case, star, but their fluency and accuracy are good. We're going to group those 4 kids together and really focus on inferencing, for example, or strategies. Okay. Then we're going to take these 3 kids here, who they're low in comprehension, but also low in fluency. We're going to group them together in small group instruction and do fluency building activities. But now, let's take the kids who had low accuracy, so we assess those kids on the decoding skills. I've got 3 kids in 2nd grade who don't even have basic letter sound correspondence yet. I've got another one who doesn't understand short vowel CV, didn't do well in short vowel CVC. And then these kids did fine on those skills, but they don't know digraphs, as is this one, and these kids don't know consonant blends. So I'm probably going to take these 4 kids and run a small group with them, and probably take these kids and run a small group with them. See what I mean? If you've got enough kids where if you've got 5 kids who need digraphs, well, you put those 5 kids together. But if you don't, then you can certainly group consecutive skills just fine. So looking at these data, I've got these kids here, and by the way, I'll freely admit, I have no idea what to do with these kids right here. Good readers baffle me. They make no sense. I don't know what you do with them all day. They make no sense to me. These kids make a lot more sense. So I don't know what to do with these kids, but they'll be grouped together and you'll do something wonderful with them. Now, these kids, a group that's going to be focusing on inferencing perhaps, a group that's going to be focusing on building fluency, a group that will be, a group that will be beginning all the way back to letter sound correspondence and short CVCs, and then a group that is digraphs and blends. So I've got 4 small groups out of these data, basically. And we're going to use those to drive instruction, doing small group differentiation. That's a much better approach than trying to look at a kid's level and group those kids, all the G's together, all the 28s together, whatever. Now, I think for time's sake, I'm going to make just one quick point, and we do have to have independent reading. I'm not saying don't do that. It's extremely important. But don't use this. Oh my gosh. This says, I'm a deer, I live in the forest. What does this say? Just good, right? Very good. It said, I'm a porcupine, I live in a log. So you basically got every word on that page right, except for one probably, without even seeing the words. That's not reading. And I see too many schools use this, and the kids love it, by the way. It's kind of fun. It's a chance to be successful, which is, I get. But this is not reading. And this makes me cringe every time I see this happen in a school. So I think decodable, and I call them generalized text. I'm not sure what else to call them. I'm still waiting for that better term, because I don't think authentic really works, because that's not a good differentiation. Because I've seen lots of decodable texts that were quite authentic, quite engaging, quite however you define authentic. But this one, you cannot do core instruction in decoding without a decodable text. The kids won't memorize, don't use the word memorize, won't know its automaticity, and won't generalize it. The point of this is to help them learn its automaticity and be able to generalize it and remember it later. But then, of course, we're going to give them other texts that they can practice previous skills or learn new ones or build vocabulary. It doesn't have to be connected to any particular lesson. And I do want kids engaged in those types of texts. I want them to be able to read 93 to 97% of the words. Good readers, don't worry about it. Let good readers do whatever the heck they want. What I'm saying is with a struggling reader, make sure they can read 93 to 97% of the words. If they can't, then don't let them read that book. Okay. Or, let me take that back. Let them read it, but you're going to have to support them. You have to provide scaffolding. I do a lot of pre-teaching in that scenario. I'll pre-teach the vocabulary. I'll pre-teach the high-frequency words so the kids can read the text. That's fine. That's good, but you got to do that. And we've done that in research and found that the number of times they read at an instructional level of 93 to 97% and growth correlated at 0.8. 0.8. You never see a correlation of 0.8, right? So really, really highly correlated. So I think we have to move beyond levels and get the skill. Here's the DRA levels. So again, keep in mind, they have a standard error measure of plus or minus 2. So a 20 is really somewhere between a 28 and a 16, basically. It's a little oversimplified, but still. So if you tell me, hey, a kid went from a 16 to a 28, isn't that great? Kind of in the same, that's the same. And certainly all the kids who are at a 24 are going to have different needs. Many of the kids who are at 24 are going to have different needs. So we move away from level focus on skill, and you'll have better differentiation with small group instruction. Now, I'm not sure time sake wise if we have time for questions and comments or not, but I'm happy to entertain them. I'm also happy to stick around and have you come talk to me during lunch if you like as well.
So clear, so concise that we can do better for kids. There really is a differentiator, right? In what we keep thinking is the right thing for kids. And I loved how Dr. Burns, thank you for telling us we need to differentiate for kids. We need to figure out really how we're teaching those skills. Really thoughtful. And I feel really great that we created something that is personalized, not just based on the skills that child needs to do, but also their name on it, right? Like, a huge part, I hope you hear the intention of Dr. Burns was talking about each child needs to be working on what is their true needs as a reader, and that engagement level matters, right? So we feel just really lucky to take in that data. And I have to tell you, it took a long time for us to create that algorithm when you asked about it. It wasn't easy. We have tons of data scientists working on it, and we would love to partner with you and show you more about our algorithm. Our take-home decodable packs are personalized for kids based on their data, based on the skills they personally need to work on, and personalized for them. And to a huge shout out for Dr. Hart Paulson, who helped us just understand that connection between reading and writing and what we can do for kids. Dr. Barry, who made us think about really how do we engage teachers? How does that work around professional development, and really putting that thought and intention behind it in the classrooms and in districts. And Dr. Burns to help us really think about almost teaching to the child and who their needs are and really personalizing that instruction. So thank you. And I think there are more symposiums coming up. I'm sure my team's going to send it out, and we just feel very lucky to be here today and learn with all of you. So thank you.